Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today, sitting down to talk about the rock of the games industry, Obsidian Entertainment. This is such an important developer for Xbox, and they're a company that is sort of faded out of the public eye, but also kind of hasn't. It's a really interesting position that they're in, and I'll explain why. Because on one front, they are absolutely being talked about and are showing things off in the name of Pentiment coming out this year, November 15th, in the name of Grounded 1.0 coming out at the end of September. So they are releasing things, updating things, talking. They are there in the public eye, but let's be honest with ourselves. In the terms of high-profile game releases, Avowed being number one, number two being The Outer Worlds 2, there hasn't been much conversation on it. And what we're going to do in this video is not only run down the history of both these games, but this strange situation that's sort of bubbling up in the background with Obsidian that I haven't seen much conversation on. I have talked about it in the past in previous videos, but now there seems to be a lot more conversation, particularly around The Outer Worlds 2, where I feel like certain points will be heard a lot more than they originally were. So with that, if you're new here, you're into conversations about, of course, Obsidian, the games they work on, and Xbox Game Studios, you're in the right place. Consider subscribing. Let's start off with Avowed. This is the number one starting point I always go to with every conversation about Avowed. It's, where the hell is this game? And I normally don't mind when a game takes its time, but it's because of what was said to the consumer versus what we have received, which is nothing. So at last year's Xbox and Bethesda game showcase, Obsidian had a strong presence. This has been a consistent thing for them. They have been a part of all of these showcases. And it was expected after the announcement of Avowed that there's a good chance we would see that at the Xbox Bethesda game showcase. However, what we saw there instead was the game that's likely coming after Avowed, The Outer Worlds 2, as well as the biggest update to come to Grounded. What's strange is that Obsidian posted in the Xbox Wire after these reveals and said the following. For those who are wondering about Avowed, the team is hard at work making something we're sure fans of our games and the Pillars of Eternity universe are going to love. While we are not showing off anything right now, we are looking forward to showing off what we have been working on soon. And I really think if you remove that last word from that paragraph, it is totally fine what's happening with Obsidian. But because they promised soon, and a lot has changed since then, and we have not seen Avowed since, there has been a lot of eyebrow raising, The Rock, that people are really looking at Obsidian wondering what's going on. Because it's not a team that you often hear with a lot of turmoil in our industry, especially when they're releasing games and they're experimenting with smaller titles like Pentiment, like Grounded. What is there to complain about? What is the controversy? They've sort of run under the radar. And not to say that there is controversy, but if reports are to be believed, there are some problems with the production of Avowed. Obsidian has pretty much been termed as the darling studio under Xbox Game Studios, the one that is flourishing the most beneath the new banner. So it was a bit of a surprise when this year's showcase rolls around. Your boy's sitting there in his Christmas suit in a video that ended up getting demonetized for whatever reason, making his predictions. And I thought Avowed would be here, and it wasn't. It wasn't until afterwards that I saw on Reddit, Jason Schreier had the following to say in a tweet, which is Avowed has gone through some reboots and changed directors pretty recently. Don't know if it'll be there today, but I wouldn't expect to play it for a while. This tweet was eventually deleted, and Jason had provided some reasoning behind that. He said, I deleted the tweet because I didn't want news sites and subreddits making a whole thing out of a tweet response. I had thought that was already reported. I'm still pretty sure it was. Anyway, it's true. Whether or not the game is at the show today, it went through some big leadership changes in early 2021 and is likely a ways away. 2021 is such a key discussion point when it comes to Avowed because at the same time, hype was very high for this game. Why was that? There was a leak from Windows Central Gaming documenting alpha gameplay for Avowed and how it was effectively Obsidian's Skyrim. It was highly interactable. It sounded awesome, and I could not wait to see more. So Obsidian's also been the beneficiary of convenient leaks that have been encouraging. But Jason said he thought this had been reported. So I poked around, saw if anyone had said anything, and all people were doing was reiterating what Jason had said. Otherwise, though, what I had seen was Chris Avellone, formerly of Obsidian Entertainment, did have something to say. And the reason why this one didn't receive much coverage, despite a lot of the people being against Chris in the games industry, was that they feel like he's got a bone to pick with Obsidian's management, because he has been quite vocal about not being too pleased with the company after everything that has transpired. However, what he had to say does line up with what Jason said, and I think it does lend some more credibility to that, as what he did have to say was they keep losing leads on that project, not a good sign. And again, when you look at the tweet in August, it does line up with what Jason is saying. He also said, "You said insiders say it's on track, but I don't know what that means. I have heard the new project lead is much better, but I admittedly was curious what the Far Cry writer would have done if he hadn't quit. Also, Oscuro quitting was a huge loss for the studio too." So the name of the game here is leads have left the title, and in turn, there have been vacancies that need to be filled, and so it has halted the project. Kind of explains itself. What could have also halted the project, although we're not entirely sure, is it's recently been discovered that Avowed is being produced on Unreal Engine 5. Given this is a relatively new engine and multiple Xbox Game Studios teams are working on it, such as the Coalition, there are some things that likely you have to overcome. Granted, this is an area designer intern over on LinkedIn. Emphasis on intern. It could mean nothing. He could have been doing busy work, but since Avowed is linked to his experience, it would suggest that that work he did on Unreal Engine 5 was connected to Avowed, which I do think is important to consider, as that could be something that caused a major setback. I remember when Obsidian originally said, "We'll see you soon with some gameplay," my head, like everyone else's, went straight to the Game Awards. Okay, that's soon. That's a big showcase. Obsidian showed off the Outer Worlds there for the first time. It was a big splash. It was a big deal. It would only make sense that they show up again for Avowed, but they never did. So to me, it's a very perplexing situation and quite strange, but overall suggesting that Avowed is a ways away. Ever since the Xbox Bethesda showcase, I've been asked, are we going to see Avowed here? And my answer is just punt it to next showcase from Xbox. That is where I think is the most likely place you see it. But if it's being rebooted, it's resetting, etc., that can put it in a spot where it may be a little bit longer. Here's where it gets even weirder. Let's go back to the Outer Worlds 2. This was announced in the middle of these reboots, these lead positions being all shuffled around. And a lot of people looked at that game, given its announcement was nothing more than a cinematic trailer, and thought, okay, well, clearly it's going to be a while before we get our hands on this one. This seems more like a, we'll see in a number of years hiring announcement that also confirms this will be Xbox exclusive, so no one can argue it years down the line because it's been in stone for a number of years by the time the game comes out. However, if you look a little deeper, it appears that the Outer Worlds 2 was in development for much longer than people realize. This was another thing that I'm saying here I did report on a while ago. Some people listened, not a lot though. This information recycled. I saw it on Reddit. I saw it on Twitter. I went, okay, time to talk about it again because more people are willing to listen. I don't say that with any animosity in my heart. I just know news is based off timeliness sometimes. You can be the first and it doesn't matter. Anyway, according to LinkedIn, again, our best friend it seems, production for The Outer Worlds 2, according to the production director, began September 2019. That's right around when the first game was releasing, and they were all in on a sequel already. This would make sense that they would be all in at this stage in the game. The reason for that is because The Outer Worlds 1 had so much momentum behind it thanks to Bethesda's blunders. Based off what was happening with Fallout 76, the very awkward situation with a single-player franchise putting out a subscription service known as Fallout First, even though there were tons of bugs and glitches, it was just a heinous move by Bethesda. And then you see The Outer Worlds come along, pretty much saying, we're the thing you want. Timing couldn't have been better, and Obsidian rode that momentum, and I imagine they greenlit a sequel right away, because while I love The Outer Worlds, it was admittedly a bit constrained in certain areas and reminded me more of KOTOR than anything, which I'm not going to complain about. That's even what Obsidian said, that the areas were more like hubs. I'm about that. But I'm sure as developers that are ambitious, they probably wanted to go bigger and badder. And so here we are with the greenlit sequel for next generation consoles. Again, 3 years in development as of this point in time. That is significant. This game could be ready to be shown off next year as well. Again, making things strange, but also setting up Obsidian Entertainment to sort of have their Insomniac Games moment, where Insomniac pulled up and said, oh, we're going to drop Ratchet & Clank and Miles Morales within a almost 6-month window. No one could believe it, but I also feel like the way things timed out, it could be similar to what's happening here with Obsidian. Because when you take a look at something like The Outer Worlds 2, very little details are known. New star system, new crew, same Outer Worlds. We know that Megan Starks is going to be one of the senior writers on the project, which is significant because she was the lead narrative designer for Murder on Eridanos, the final DLC for The Outer Worlds, which is fantastic. So there are some great heads behind this project. I'm excited to see where it all goes, but ultimately, Obsidian's in this state of limbo, but not really. Again, they're releasing games, they're talking about games, right? We have Pentiment, we have Grounded 1.0. They're in the public eye, but when it comes to their bigger, high-profile projects, they're seemingly being jumbled around a bit, which is surprising to see, but it's almost a camouflage for them because they are releasing these smaller projects. They're not making the list of companies that have been reported on in Xbox Game Studios, such as someone like Undead Labs, The Initiative, so on and so forth. The list goes on, that have received these scathing breakdowns of how the studio culture has gone into a downward spiral since Microsoft got their hands on them. However, Obsidian's been one of the most vocal, positive contributors to Microsoft in terms of the conversation. Same thing with In Exile. At the end of the day, a lot of these conversations end up not mattering when games are being delivered. That is the unfortunate reality of entertainment, that the human side of it doesn't matter. But still, I wanted to make sure we sat down and talked about what's happening here with Obsidian because I found it overall very strange and to a certain extent under-discussed. And now with all that information provided, it's time for you to discuss. What do you think about everything I had to share here with Obsidian Entertainment? Is there any concern? For me personally, I'm not too worried. Again, the fact that they're releasing games is great. Avowed, a little more concerned. The Outer Worlds seems to be lining up to be right on track with like 5-year development cycle. We're seeing it next year. Could be in the cards. We will see. But with that, I'm looking forward to seeing your thoughts. Fire away. Other than that, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below. And a big thank you to all the patrons, all the members who continue to support the hell out of the content here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.